It's good to have you guys back for today's episode of the Office 365 Pulse. So, joined by Tom and Adam today. So, Tom is back from vacation. How's the vacation, Tom?
Yay. Vacation was nice. I happened to leave Minneapolis right before each big cold blast came through, and it was nice to be warm when everybody else I knew was. There was a 100-degree temperature shift between wind chill when I left and when we landed in Fort Myers on the first trip. So, yeah, that's not bad in 3 hours.
I bet that was wonderful. I bet that was wonderful.
I feel like the band's back together again, guys. All three of us are here.
There you go.
Great. I love it. I love it. All right, guys. Well, let's kind of go through the roadmap today. We've been chatting a little bit on our own, but I think we should, as Adam says, let's start with the bad news first. And so, Adam, you want to talk to us about some of the things that have been canceled or marked as, they went from in development to canceled on the roadmap? You want to kind of give us some details about those?
Sure, yeah, so they really all fall under one big category in what we see changing for the week. And basically, they were all stuff related to the Service Health Dashboard. So Service Health Dashboard is what shows you the health of all the products and all the services you have going in 365. And they had a lot of stuff on the roadmap that looked like it was going to make it more friendly for admins to get information there. Stuff like personalized tenant notifications, user-level details, multi-geo tenants, stuff like that. Just stuff to enhance the user experience of the Service Health Center to make it a little bit more targeted at you and your tenant. And they canceled 4 of those this week. No idea what that means long term. This is similar to what Jen and I were talking about last week. The hopeful person in me would think maybe they're going to present that same information in a different way. Maybe they're moving away from the Service Health Dashboard. But really, that was the big thing that we saw is all of these updates that they had been working on to kind of bring the Service Health Dashboard to what I would kind of consider like 2.0, give a little bit more information, seems to have been not only put on the back burner, but actually canceled for now.
Interesting. Yeah, I seriously doubt some of these things are going away for good because I know there's a lot of, value in these things, reporting an outage, support for geo-tenants, different things like that. So I have a feeling we're going to see them come back in some other form. At least that would be my guess. So maybe the next couple of weeks we'll see it hit that in development category and on the roadmap there. So.
Yeah, it seems like as a whole they'd kind of been moving more towards Microsoft 365 with Azure integration and stuff, and the Service Health Dashboard is a specific Office 365 thing, so it wouldn't shock me at all if that information is just recaptured and represented in something that's more across the breadth of services.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, cool. All right. So we went from what's canceled. How about we go to what is actually rolling out? And so, Tom, I know you love this stuff. We've been talking about it a little bit. Talk to me about what's coming in the land of SharePoint right now. There's a lot of good things that move from in development to rolling out. Although, guys, rolling out, they haven't hit all of my tenants yet. Yes. I think I'm getting piecemeal, piece by piece, but I'm super excited to get some of these. So go ahead and give us the overview, Tom.
Yeah, the overview is there's 4 entries, and 3 of them are individual, but they all kind of show up as an umbrella with the 4th one. So headers that you see on site pages now, instead of having that humongous chunk of white space that first time I saw it, I'm like, why?
Why do we need this?
Clean white space is good. This much white space isn't. Everything's below the fold under this. They're now giving you They're now giving you the option to have either standard, which is assuming that's the same thing we currently have. Then you have minimal and compact, which I think that's going to help with trying to compress some of that white space and allow you to have more things, above the scroll, as we often put it. And I think a lot of people are going to like that because while we're just rolling out SharePoint Online right now, we did have a number of people who were like, how come there's so much space? Can I narrow that down? I'm like, unfortunately, no, you can't. This kind of addresses that, which is good. Second one that they're talking about is that now we have footers that can be standard. And that's kind of cool because, of course, on our SharePoint 2010 site, we have standard footers at the bottom, and those were always kind of weird, kludgy things that we had to try to update with HTML files and stuff. Now it looks like they're going to allow us to do that as part of site panel updates, which is great. The flip side of that, unfortunately, is it only looks like it's going to be available in communication sites and pages in communication sites. So if you have, let's say you go out to a SharePoint library or something like that in your communication sites, you're not going to see the banner or the footer down there. Plus, you're not going to see it on regular team sites. I'm really hoping that ends up becoming something that is incorporated at a later date. I can't imagine it would be that much different. But I can see somebody's going to ask for it. I just know it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So for people who want to see those changes, the best place to go is going to be to go to user voice and add that entry in if that's something that you want to see it on those other pages, or even in the Microsoft Tech community, you could go in and probably find some of the product team working on those features that can go and do it. I'm kind of excited about these features coming out too, Tom. I think it's one of the last things that is going to make people who have these customized intranets, it's going to be one of those last pushes that it's like, all right, guys, there's no reason not to go modern yet. And so I think you're going to start to see a lot of people do that. And so I'm really excited about it too. Most of these things are going to come, you kind of mentioned it in the panel. So in the gear where you have the change the look of the site, all of these are going to pop out so that you can then go and change those and make those settings. So
right, it sounded like they're going to have a tabbed entry where you could do change the site in all three. Third one we haven't talked about yet, but you have all three of those mechanisms that you could click there, which makes it really easy to get to, which is great. The third one that we hadn't mentioned is that they're bringing mega menus. Yay!
I know. This one everyone's been eagerly waiting.
Yeah.
I get asked about this probably about once a week from somebody saying, when are my mega menus coming? So hopefully very soon.
Yeah, if you look at the illustrations that Microsoft has provided, what is nice is they are not flyaway menus, which is always difficult because you go over them and you miss it and the fly goes away and you spend all your time trying to, I need to go practice solitaire so I can click on individual items on the screen. It's a thing where you would hover over, say, one of your hub site entries up at the top. And then when you hover over that, a panel drops down, which has two layers of, here's a header title, and then entries underneath that, which are indented slightly. So you have a nice mega menu that doesn't have a lot of movement, but it has a lot of space to give you all the different things. That is going to be critical as we sit here and try to come up with the new intranet homepage without us having to design it, because what we had right now was unfortunately an HTML generated mess that was, I don't want to touch it. It'll go break. I don't want to fix it.
And semicolons there. So
oh god,
now
yes,
in this new solution you won't. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, that's going to be really good. One thing I'm going to add too that wasn't quite on our list, but it kind of falls into that footer piece, is you see that little tab at the bottom of most or all of your pages that say feedback?
Yeah, that's gone now.
Yeah, it still has not hit our tenant yet, but it's it used to be, hey, you could go out there with a PowerShell command and remove it. I'm like, I really don't want to be manipulating things like that, but now that's actually going to be removed, period. And so here in probably the next week or two, I would think, that feedback link will go away. And I've got a couple of users who are just ecstatic over that one, that they will not have users confused over what feedback means.
Oh, the joys of working with users.
It's such little tiny things,
It's a little thing that makes a big impact. So, yeah, I'm excited about the feedback one going away again. I love it. SharePoint wins again this week, y'all, on the most items going to rolling out and changing from in development to rolling out. So super, super excited to see some of those things. They've been talking about them a lot, and so I'm excited to get my hands on it and see it. So the reminder for those that are listening, rolling out just means they've started the process of going to first release. So if you're a first release tenant, you're going to eventually see them roll out to your tenant. It's going to depend on a lot of factors that aren't really, released to the common folk. We don't know how Microsoft has chosen to do that rollout, but we should start to see these features hit if you're a first release tenant very soon. So excited about that. And then we have one more big one that I think is a big a big old mystery at this point. So I'm really excited about it because I think the potential for it is huge. I think it's going to be one of those things that just removes a headache from a lot of organizations because they have to support, or it's not even one of those tools that they have to support. It's something that people just go and do. So you kind of get that whole shadow IT where people are just going and using whatever tool they need to do their job. But they have a new solution coming out called Forms Pro. And so this is going to go into some sort of a preview. A lot of the documentation I have found has been leading to dead links. So that really didn't make me feel warm and fuzzy about that. But it looks like it's coming, from what I can tell, and for I read the documentation, it looks like it might be coming out of the Flow team or be very closely associated with the Flow team. It's kind of in development and rolling out. It kind of made the roadmap twice, which I thought was interesting. But it's going to be an enterprise survey tool. So if you think about all the controls that you want to have in the back end, so you're knowing what people are doing, making sure they're doing what you want them to do, making sure things are getting stored where they need, so you have more control over it, and you can even potentially connect to back end data. There's some Dynamics 365 pieces that they talk about being able to be connected. So I think we'll see more about this in the coming weeks. So when I think of this, I think of replacements for like SurveyMonkey and different things like that. And you can do a lot of things right now with Microsoft Forms, but it's pretty basic. And then you can export to Excel, whereas the documentation that they have about this, they're talking about going into Power BI. So I think it's going to be more robust forms with maybe some enterprise data on the back end, and then being able to do reports about them. So I'm a little bit excited about this, trying to see what it is. Adam brought up a good point. Pro usually means licensing costs, so we'll kind of have to see where that goes and see what that's part of. But that hit that was one of those ones that kind of hit the roadmap. There's been a huge buzz about it in journalists and stuff like that, realizing it hit the roadmap, but nobody's got all the clear answers, but it's coming. So guys, what do you guys think about that one?
I think it's cool that they don't appear like Adam said earlier. It's aliens. It's all about aliens, and we're not really sure if that's the truth or not. But I like the fact that at least at this stage of the game, it appears that the regular quote unquote version of Forms won't be affected by this. So we've had a lot of users who are just like, oh my God, Forms is so awesome, and they really like it. I'm really hoping that Forms Pro doesn't show up and kind of push that out of the way and then make this, sorry, we're not going to roll it out because it's going to cost us more money. I'm hoping they're side by side to say, for what you want to do, Forms, knock yourself out. If you want to go really high tech on all these different things, let's talk about Pro.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, I think it's one of those ones we'll just kind of see. This one feels to me like something that might stay in preview until they kind of land where it needs to fit in the rest of the ecosystem.
And what the pricing model will look like.
Yeah, so I'm not too worried about this one. I think usually when they say public preview like that, it's something that you enroll in and you opt to be in. So I wouldn't really be too worried about it. I know some things hit the message center, so be looking at your message center and it's going to give you instructions and stuff like that. But this would just be one, I think, to, if you're interested in it, jump in the preview and go full bore and play with it and give your feedback. If you're not, you can kind of turn it off until more details come out is kind of my view on it.
Yeah. I'm hopeful, kind of combining both y'all's points together. I'm a big fan of Forms. I think it's great. But the most common feedback I got from the enterprises I work with is, yeah, this is great, but this isn't enterprise level yet. I can't really take this to use it in a business fashion. I wouldn't be comfortable using this to send things off to my customers. It's great for internal. I'm really hoping this will kind of bridge that gap, especially when they're bringing in stuff from Flow and CDS and some of the other teams that we're seeing that have more of that enterprise level automation and intelligence behind it. I'm really hoping that what they're working on here is something that gives some of the functionality of Forms, which is widely popular with users and pretty intuitive to use, and adds in some enterprise level features that, to be blunt, Forms is kind of lacking right now. And I'm hoping a year from now, year and a half from now, that's really where this is going to be, is basically something that's more commercialized in the sense of in a good way that people can use to kind of bring that enterprise level piece to the survey.
Well, maybe what Forms Pro allows you to do too, and again, all speculation because we don't have much detail about it, but maybe it's a thing where you can say, okay, I'm using Remedy for my help desk system, and every 10th Remedy ticket that comes out, I want to send out a survey. And so somehow I can take that and trigger something out of Forms that will fire it off automatically, and then I can get that information back into a central repository, do all my Power BI stuff and things like that. That I can see as a really, really powerful use case. If you can connect outside triggers instead of having to send something out manually and having that be something that, unless you want to commit a resource to it full time, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, most definitely. So very, very interesting space to watch. And so we'll keep you posted as those change and as we learn a little bit more and get more details. But then our last category of the day is in development. So we kind of have two areas to talk through. And I'm going to let Tom go first and kind of talk us through. There were some changes, and this impacted your tenant and your environment specifically because of the way you're at, but some of those Office 365 Office Pro Plus changes that are coming out and the different things there. So why don't you walk us through those pretty quick?
Yeah, there was just a couple that I found that I thought were somewhat interesting in the fact that when you roll out Office Pro Plus now, normally you would get the whole Word, Excel, blah, 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 and OneNote. I'm sorry, take that back. Not ready to speak about that one yet. Normally it would roll all those out and say that was it. Well, now Teams is going to be part of that rollout, which I think is really cool. One, yes, it commits Microsoft to making that a fully functioning member of the Office ecosphere. And yeah, the Teams client is a heck of a lot easier to use and more powerful than the browser. So I really like that. One thing that I also saw mentioned, and they mentioned this as a semi-annual release, so this kind of affects us, so we haven't seen it yet, but others may have, is that apparently they're going to stop rolling out the OneNote client as part of Office Pro Plus, and they are now looking at Windows 10, the OneNote client in that environment as being the default experience. I am not quite sure I'm really thrilled about that yet because what about Mac users? What about people who aren't quite up to Windows 10 yet? Yes, I understand they need to come along.
And they probably feel more safer doing this because Windows 7 is about to be end of life.
Exactly. But I can see there being some pushback on that. But I'm also hoping that possibly gets them to update a few more things in OneNote that makes it just slightly different than the other Office clients. Not majorly so, but just enough that's irritating when you go to look for a feature that's there in everything else, but it's not there in OneNote. So,
yeah, I'm guilty of that. I do not like the Windows 10 OneNote app. I don't use it. I use the client all the time. I don't use OneNote on the web. I use a client. It's probably my own personal hangups. But it just works, and I know where everything is, and it just works. It's fine. But in all fairness, I've got others on my team that don't use the client at all and only use the web. So it's always interesting, especially when we're on calls together. So that's an interesting one. So Tom, I'm excited to hear more about how that kind of works out with you guys and from your perspective there, because you guys are doing the semi-annual releases. So that's a really good update for people to kind of know that that's brewing. And again, if you don't like it, that's when you go to the Microsoft Tech community and you go to User Voice and just tell them you don't like it. And then there's probably others that are telling them they don't like it and they're listening. So that's the place to go to get your voice heard.
As an unbiased OneNote 2016 user, we just like to encourage you guys that if you don't like this chain, no.
That's too funny. All right, Adam, I think our next, well, I guess there's one, and then I'll let Adam go, because Adam was so excited when we had our pre-meeting, and I was like, wow, I was, I thought that was cool, but he was, excited, so I'll let him talk about that. But they're doing some things in development around support tickets. So if you go into Office 365 and you submit a support ticket, they're doing things like making it easier and more transparent for you to get the data of how it was resolved. So giving you full-page summaries of what's going on, putting in a tool that lets you do callback scheduling. I don't know if you guys have ever waited for the infamous callback from support. That's a fun one. We wait, we get it. It's, you know, it's leaves a little to be desired. And so they're working on some of the pieces with that, as well as like a ticket history and different things like that. So I think we'll start to see some of those pieces come in and get tracked. That's in development. So hopefully we'll see some of that hitting a preview soon, or getting into rolling out or something like that, so we can give them feedback. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Adam. And Adam, talk to us about the Apple Watch.
Sure. So I'm going to do two things real quick before then, because we're going to save the happy news for the other nerds like me for the end.
Okay.
There were two things in development that I liked. One of them is core to what I've spent probably the last decade of my life doing. So for you guys that don't do Exchange, you can just gloss over this real quick. But if you're doing hybrid remote mailbox move migrations, which is the most popular form of migrations in Exchange, they always made you, when you're going through to do the migration, fill in two forms called the bad item limit and the large item limit. And you basically put a number in there, and it was if Microsoft hit a piece of mail they couldn't migrate, it would be a bad item, or a piece of mail that was too big, it'd be a large item. But the annoying thing was, like, you put a number in there like 5 or 10, and if it hit that number, it aborted the migration. And for the most part, I could see this being intelligent in the sense of, oh, hey, way too many things didn't move that I wanted. I might want to think about that. In practice, anytime I've ever had a migration fail because of that, the next step was, okay, well, I'll just bump up that number by another 10 and try again. So they're actually taking that out where you no longer have to supply those numbers, and it will just be better reporting on the end. So anyone who's actually done one of those migrations, to be honest, it was kind of silly that you gave them numbers, because there wasn't really any troubleshooting. It's just like, yep, this isn't going to work. I'm just going to increase the number and try it again. The other thing, too, real quickly, I just thought this was cool. Anyone who's been involved with security and do e-discovery cases, they're actually adding a refresh into e-discovery cases. So if you've gone and done an e-discovery search, you no longer have to do the whole search again. There's actually a way that you can just refresh the results, which I think is really, really cool to get an updated view. But the last thing, the nerdy thing that I was excited about, so I got myself an iOS watch for Christmas. I know a lot of fellow people in the community that use them, that like Apple Watches, that kind of like what they do. I was excited when I first got it, and the first thing I went to go do is set up the watch face. It's customizable, it's digital, you can go in and do stuff. I'm a workaholic. People probably know this, but I check my email constantly. The idea of not having to always pick up my phone and look at it to see when an email came in and what it was, I thought was great. But all of the default watch faces that were there had no integration with the Outlook app that came on. It just used the default mail application. I'd gotten used to using the Outlook app and honestly like it better than the default Apple Mail application, because I can do stuff like automatic replies from it. And so I was basically in a situation where I couldn't put any update notifications from Outlook of new mails or anything like that inside of my default watch face. So it'd still give me a notification that I got an email, but none of the things of seeing like how many new unread messages I have on my watch face just wasn't an option. They're developing that now, which is, to me, long overdue. It's something that could have always been done because they have other applications to go through and do it. But as someone who's kind of fallen in love with my Apple Watch and what I can do, and it's also a workaholic, and a lot of you people that I'm sure are the same, I'm basically tied at the hip to my email. That's just the primary form of communication that is used professionally in what we do. And so being able to integrate some of that stuff into the default watch face, and it's in development. I don't know when it's necessarily going to be released.
I'm super excited about it too, Adam.
Yeah.
I didn't get as, I mean, like we talked
My
about
eyes
it.
lit up.
Lit up. I'm like, woo! So I think it's great. I use my Apple Watch. It's my one productivity, device that I use all the time. I wear it every morning. It's just something, it's become a habit for doing. And I never expected it to be like that when I got it, but I love it. So I'm very much looking forward to better integration with Outlook. Most definitely, because I use the Outlook app on my phone as well. So everything you're saying, I echo. Tom, now, do you have an Apple Watch?
No, I just have a Fitbit that tells me how out of shape I am and the whole bit. So
now we're going to pressure you to get an Apple Watch so you can get the wonderful new quicker experience.
You can try that. I'm not quite sure you're going to be terribly successful. That is one of those things that maybe it's just because of my age or what.
Hold on, I got one for my mom for Christmas who is 73, not thinking she would like it, and she has fallen in love with it, Tom. So we can talk later, but there's hope.
Okay, it could happen. I'm just not thinking it's high on my list of things I want to buy right now.
To each their own, Tom.
There you go.
To each their own. I don't care what you use or don't use, but you'll just have to listen to Adam and I geek out about it. Well, quite honestly,
You can get the childish joy that I had.
Geek out about it. I mean,
He's so cute.
Excited. He was excited about that. Well, guys, this is cool. This has been our quick update of the roadmap this week. Hopefully, we'll get some more changes hitting the roadmap next week. So we'll see kind of what's going on. But right now, SharePoint is the team to beat this year in terms of getting things to that rolling out phase. So I'm super, super excited about that. And I guess we'll keep watching Forms. That's the big one we're watching. And other than that, we will see you guys next week. Thanks,
Sounds
everybody.
great. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, guys.